Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Dixon, and I'm the director of the Maritime Retirees Relations Center here at UCLA. And we're so glad to have a great program today for you that will kind of get into the nuts and bolts of retirement. And we'll just begin with our little introduction about our department. We are part of the Chancellor's Organization, and we strive to advocate for all retired staff and faculty at UCLA. Our programming consists of programs that focus on wellness, financial security, retirement basics, relationship building, and civic engagement. Our department is a small one, but small but mighty. So thank you to Maria Lubrano, who helped coordinate this program with Westcom. Every year, we help retire about 700 retirees, and our goal as a department is for you to stay engaged with us and communicate your retirement experience, both as a professional and a personal one, because we can only make it better for the next group of retirees for the years to come. So in the chat, I will put our website, our bi-monthly newsletter, and also our YouTube channel, where we have programs from the past couple years where we're on Zoom, and those who allowed us to record, we do have them there. So I'll put that in the chat right now. For those on the call today, please keep yourself muted until we have a time for Q&A. But let me introduce our guest speaker that I had opened and then I just closed it. So give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. So we had 3 people here today from Westcom. DJ, he's the Director of Investment Services, Karl Gerstenacker, financial advisor, and Sal Murguia. And I'm sorry I butchered all of your names. But today's topic is retirement basics. DJ has been at Westcom for over 25 years of experience in the field, including insurance and program management in all aspects of the financial services industry. He currently holds the position of Director, Financial Services, and is responsible for a team of dedicated financial advisors serving Westcom members in Southern California. DJ is passionate about helping others achieve financial success, and through awareness, communication, and education, he's also a very active member of his community and donates his free time to serve several nonprofits, including Children's Bureau, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, and the Multiple Sclerosis Society and Goodwill of Orange County. So thank you all. I think I'll turn it over to Sal. Yes, okay, so Sal will lead us off. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that, Aisha, and thank you for that little description, brief description of David Jabczenski, DJ. Yeah, he's heavily involved in what he does, and we appreciate everything that he does, and also with Karl Gerstenacker as well with his experience over at Westcom. And I'll let them introduce themselves throughout the Zoom meeting that we have throughout the presentation. Also, well, for the audience that's tuning in and will view this later on, my name is Sal Murguia. I'm Partner Development Representative with Westcom Credit Union. I've been with Westcom for a little bit over 4 years, and I help initiate Westcom's contractual relationship with UCLA. So if I could for a moment just share my screen, just do a little bit of some housekeeping in terms of who we are and why we're associated with UCLA. I'd really appreciate this, and this will just help us just give context into why we're here. And so allow me to share my screen. There we go. So I also want to just say good morning and thank you for joining us on a Zoom call on a Monday morning. Just wanted to say that I know a number of us have been in, having the Zoom experience for a little over a couple of years now. So we really are, how should I put it? We really are sympathetic for everyone who may be having Zoom fatigue and what have you, but we feel that this is a very powerful way to reach a large audience. And when we do these types of presentations, just please excuse any sort of technical difficulties if we need to solve anything. And we appreciate your patience on this. DJ Karl and myself have done a number of Zoom presentations throughout the pandemic, as we've gotten used to calling it. And so, hopefully we're able to provide you with some good quality information and, help you walk away with something that is really informative and very valuable to you. But just to give you a little bit of background on Westcom Credit Union, we were established in 1934. We're one of the largest credit unions in Southern California. And a credit union offers similar products and services as a bank, but like other credit unions, Westcom is a non-for-profit, which means if you do your normal day-to-day banking with Westcom, you can save money with Westcom through lower fees and lower rates. And we have 24 Southern California branches. We have one, we'll get to our UCLA branch that's located at the UCLA campus. But just give you a background of what we do. About 4 years ago, Westcom established a relationship with UCLA, and we became the official banking partner of UCLA Athletics, Campus Life and Recreation, and Alumni Association. And through those partnerships, we started growing our relationships out, building out our relationships at UCLA, including an association just this year with Staff Assembly. And this has helped us tap into other areas where and groups of individuals at UCLA to help us reach them with some of the credit union services that we think would benefit the entire Bruin community. So our goal is to build better lives for Bruins. We want to be a resource for the entire Bruin community that includes students, alumni, faculty and staff, and that includes retirees of faculty and staff. So that's why we're here today. And our goal is to create financial healthy habits, and we want to make banking easy for those who are doing banking with us. We have a Westcom UCLA campus branch, which is open right now, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's located in the Ackerman Student Union, but I understand that a number of you are not on the UCLA campus at this time. And so just want to let you know that we have 24 other Southern California locations with normal operating business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., Sunday being closed. We also offer a lot of online services. So just give you a brief background of the type of services that we have and the loans that we would like to offer to fit your budget. Westcom offers mortgages, low auto loans, credit cards, home equity lines of credit, and personal lines of credit as well. And just this past year, Westcom took over the affinity card relationship with the UCLA community, where you can get your official UCLA Visa card for you. We have the Bruin Edge and the Bruin Choice cards, and you can just see up on the screen some of the benefits that you have for shopping at UCLA related outlets and stores. So just to give you that little brief type of description about our growing relationship with UCLA. And one of the best parts of having a relationship with UCLA is that the UCLA audience has their own financial advisor. His name is Karl Gerstenacker. He's going to be speaking with you today. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about bettering your financial situation or learning more about your personal financial situation, Karl Gerstenacker, who is a UCLA alum, will help guide you and help you advise you to getting on the right track. And this is his contact information there. So with that sort of house cleaning, I want to turn it over to our featured presenters, David Jabczenski, who is the Director of Investment Services at Westcom, and Karl Gerstenacker, our financial advisor at UCLA. So Karl, DJ, take it away.
Thanks, Al. Hey, everybody. Good morning. My name's Karl Gerstenacker. I'm the financial advisor that covers the UCLA branch, as well as the branch over in Culver City, not too far away. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys today, along with David, who's going to, I believe, jump on here in a couple of slides in the future. So hopefully you guys find the information beneficial and useful today. There's going to be, obviously, like any Zoom call, the chat box. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put those questions in the chat box, and we will, throughout the presentation, we'll get to them and answer your questions. So like Sal mentioned, this is us, right? Karl and David will be presenting today. A quick disclosure at the bottom there, pretty much just indicating that today we're going to be giving you guys some general information on retirement planning and living in retirement as well from a financial standpoint. If any of the information is interesting and you'd like to learn more about your personal situation, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can maybe schedule some time afterwards for maybe a one-on-one conversation. So we'll jump to the next slide here. So again, what we'll be discussing today is overall retirement planning, retirement strategies, right, from a financial standpoint. But before diving into that, often conversations that I have with members that I sit with and speak with is the financial aspect of retirement is very important to prepare for that. But in order for us to get into that conversation, I think it's important to understand what you envision your retirement to look like, right? For a lot of folks, it could be different. It could be, hey, I maybe finished working at a company for many, many years, and now I want to maybe transition to a different career, or maybe just part-time work to stay, active and busy. Or it could be, hey, I don't want to work anymore at all, right? I'm looking to just spend time with family, maybe find new hobbies, travel, right? Things of that nature. So planning from a financial standpoint for that, I think is important to understand what the goal is going to be for individuals. And so that's an important conversation, I think, to talk about beforehand. On this next slide here, DJ, if we go to the next one. So we're going to talk about three main subjects today when it comes to funding a comfortable retirement. Right? Number one is going to be determining your needs. And like I mentioned, not only needs, but also your wants, right? What is it that we're looking for to do in retirement? The next subject we'll cover is developing an actual investment strategy, right? Oftentimes folks do a great job of maybe saving in maybe a retirement account at work. And then when they're approaching retirement, or maybe they're already in retirement, they're trying to figure out maybe how the best and more effective way of using those funds is to make sure that it lasts throughout retirement. And finally, the third thing that we're going to cover is protecting that nest egg, right? So obviously we'll want to continue to maybe grow what we've saved over the years and use it maybe as income, but how do we protect it against maybe market fluctuations, maybe like we've seen recently in the market, right? So we'll jump into this next one here. Now, a couple of things to think about when we are trying to determine maybe what retirement income we might need, right? And how to fund your retirement. Oftentimes we got to think about our time horizon, right? Our specific time horizon. And what I mean by that is, your own retirement age. What age are we striving or trying to retire at? And then the length of your retirement, right? If we're retiring early, that might look a little bit different than if we decide to work maybe longer into our later years, right? Another thing to consider is your healthcare needs, right? Your personal situation when it comes to healthcare. As we've seen, and I'll show you guys here on a slide, the cost of healthcare is just over time, especially over the last decade or so, has been increasing at a more rapid pace than regular inflation that we see, right? Inflation is another topic that is right below that we'll be discussing. That's kind of a hot topic. If you guys have seen the news or anything on whether it's social media or just the news in general on TV, inflation has been a topic that a lot of folks have been talking about lately. And then obviously lifestyle, right? How do we want to live in retirement, right? Do we plan on traveling a lot? Is it more of a stay-at-home type of retirement? Are we working, right? Are we going to continue to work? So those are some factors that we'll be discussing today. Now, when it comes to retirement age, right, you can see there on that first bullet point, the earlier that you retire, right, the shorter time period you'll have to actually accumulate and save, and also the longer that you're going to need those funds, right? If somebody retires at 60 years old and they plan on having a long retirement and great health and a long rest of their life, they're going to need these funds to work for them for the remaining let's call it many decades of their retirement. Whereas if somebody plans on maybe retiring later years, then those funds maybe will accumulate a longer period of time because they're adding funds as they're aging, and they will likely need less because of the time frame they'll be in retirement. Another key factor that most of us will encounter is Social Security, right? Social Security is a benefit that that will be available to those folks that have been adding to it over the years into the Social Security, let's call it bucket. And it becomes available to us at age 62, as early as age 62, and our full retirement age being a little bit different depending on the year that you were born, right? And so this is a key thing to keep in mind. Although we can continue to, we can begin receiving Social Security at 62, it's important to note that there is a reduction in the benefit that we would receive compared to if we would wait till our full retirement age. And again, for most folks, full retirement age, for folks born in 1960 and after, it's 67 years old, right? And for folks born before that, it almost depends on the year that you were born, right? But again, key note here is that at 62, while we can begin our Social Security benefit, it is a reduced amount, typically anywhere from 20 to 30% reduction compared to what we would get at our full retirement age, right? Another aspect of retirement age and when we'd like to retire is Medicare, right? The cost of healthcare. Medicare eligibility begins at 65, right? But if folks decide to work, after 65, oftentimes they have healthcare at their employer that can provide that until they decide to retire. So a couple things to keep in mind here. This is a quick chart. We won't spend too much time here, but a quick graph just pretty much showing a survey that was taken in 2020 that displays folks that are currently, the orange bars show folks that are currently working and when they expect to retire, versus those green bars that you see there are folks that are actually retired and show at what age they retired, right? The general population. You can see that it's not always, in terms of expectation, it's not always the same, right? Sometimes we decide to work a little bit longer, or sometimes retirement is affected by the decision of an employer, right? Or certain financial circumstances. So it's always, I think, very important to save and invest over time in preparedness for maybe things that we might not expect. This next slide here is another bullet point that we talked about, the length of your retirement, right? So what this means is, if we're retiring early, let's say in our 60s, relative to somebody maybe retiring in their 70s, the length of your retirement may be different, right? It may be shorter for folks retiring later, it may be longer for folks that are retiring at a younger age. But again, something I advise my members and my clients is it's generally a good idea to anticipate a long retirement, right? Plan for a long retirement so we're saving and investing and growing our nest egg in the event that we do live a long retirement and we need to be utilizing these funds that we saved for monthly income for a long period of time, right? So this chart here in front of us just pretty much shows, again, another survey that shows that folks, especially with modern technology, modern medicine, we're living longer, right? Relative to maybe a couple decades ago, and so always a prudent idea to save and invest according to that, right? Planning for a long retirement. Another bullet point that we had mentioned earlier in the presentation is healthcare needs, right? Another thing to consider when we're transitioning or in retirement is the cost of healthcare, right? For an average 65-year-old couple, the cost of healthcare costs in retirement, $270,000 on average, right? For a 65-year-old retired couple, right? And you can see in this chart that, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, inflation, although is a factor every year to consider, which we'll touch on here in a second, the cost of healthcare is actually rising more than the cost of other things in the general market. So again, something that we have to take under consideration, especially as we get older, and the need for healthcare becomes much more necessary in most cases. And again, inflation, right? A hot topic recently that is important to consider. Again, a good chart to take a look at because it gives us an idea of what the power of inflation is and why it's important also to, even when folks are transitioning into retirement or they're retired, it's still important to stay invested, right? We're going to cover in more detail maybe a prudent way to stay invested throughout your retirement, but this slide here is powerful because it shows what the cost of any, these items on here, what inflation can do to them, right? Over time, I mean, the one that stands out to me here, and especially now with inflation kind of running pretty high, is the cost of the car, right? This chart here assumes just a 3% inflation rate per year for the next 20 years. Keep in mind, this past year, inflation was running over 5-6%, which is much higher than we've seen in the last, let's call it, over a decade, right? So, and it might be a trend that we might see here in coming years. Not necessarily that same rate, but it's important to keep that under consideration, that we want to stay invested and continue to grow our nest egg because the cost of everything around us is also going up every year. So with that, I'll turn it over to DJ.
Okay, thanks, Karl. Good morning. Good to see everyone. So let me just continue on going to the next slide here, but something I want to just quickly comment on. Karl was talking about inflation. It's probably the biggest, hottest topic right now that is actually affecting the market, as well as affecting all of us. Price of a gallon of gas in Southern California is close to $5 per gallon. It's the highest it's been since 2012, when we saw a spike in prices and inflation at that point. What's also interesting, and Karl mentioned this as it relates to inflation, it's been a while since we've actually seen a cost of living adjustment in Social Security. And so for the month of December, there will be a 5.9% increase in Social Security. So again, folks that are actually receiving Social Security payments, and that will be payable in January of 2022. But again, keep in mind, as Karl mentioned, it's great that they're increasing Social Security, the dollar amount that folks are going to receive. But keep in mind, we've seen the last several months of inflation very, very hot. I mean, in the 6% range, and typically it's 4% has been the average for the last 50 years. So again, it's something that everyone is watching, and of course the Federal Reserve is watching to see what happens with interest rates. And so 2022 will be an interesting year as it relates to what the Federal Reserve will do. Now, looking at this slide here, just real quickly, as it relates to lifestyle, when Karl and I are sitting down with members and clients and doing planning, it's always about kind of determining, what is the level of income that you will need in retirement. Again, may not be 100%. If we looked at a chart that showed different expenses that go up and down in retirement, surprisingly, there's some things that actually do go down. From a transportation cost standpoint, we see a lot of our clients that may have multiple cars, and they don't need 2 cars. It's, hey, you know what, let's downsize to 1 car, and they're not driving as much, so their insurance costs go down. But then, as Karl said, there's other costs that may go up, such as costs for prescription and medical services, things like that. So let me go to the next slide here. And what I think the best way to look at your sources of income is think of a 3-legged stool. So hopefully everyone has that kind of visual in your mind. Social Security being one of those legs of the stool. The second bullet point here talks about continued employment during retirement. Maybe it's a part-time position, but you could also have that second bullet point be a pension. I know several of the folks that we work with at UCLA, there is a pension that, of course, is provided. So that could be that second leg. And then, of course, the third leg is personal savings and investments. So that may be qualified accounts, non-qualified accounts. That could be CDs, money markets, and it could also be investment accounts. So all of those 3 legs add up to provide sources of income in retirement. And that's one of the things we all want to do, is to make sure, let's actually quantify and calculate what each one of those legs of the stool will generate in retirement. Now, Karl touched on this, and this is probably one of the biggest areas that we actually help our clients and members just define, is Social Security. I mean, there's a lot to kind of unpack as it relates to Social Security. So couple of bullet points that I'll just mention here. Again, Social Security is going to replace, they've always said, between 30 and 40% of your income. So again, it's not designated to be 100%, income in retirement. You can see what the average benefit is for someone. It's about $1,500 per month. But if you haven't done this already, I highly encourage you to go to the Social Security webpage, and sign up if you haven't already. It's basically the webpage is on the slide here. It's ssa.gov/my account. And it's a great tool. You go online, you can pull your benefit statement. Your benefit statement's actually been refined. I know years ago, they used to always send us our benefit statements in the mail. Now you have to pull them online, which is fine. I think from a safety standpoint, that makes sense. But your statement is going to be 2 pages. And you're going to see on the first page, you're going to see if you decide to start Social Security at age 62, it's going to show you a dollar amount. It's also going to show you every single year up until age 70 of what your income will be. And as Karl did a great job in explaining, every year past your full retirement age that you decide to postpone your Social Security, you're going to look at an 8% increase up until age 70. So again, it's something just to be aware of and to consider as you're going through and determining your Social Security. What's also great is when you go to the Social Security webpage, you're going to see a lot of other things. You're going to see benefits for your spouse. You're also going to see information on disability. You also will get information on Medicare and what that is and how to sign up for that, which is typically 3 months within your 65th birthday. So another kind of survey that I thought I'd put up on the screen here, couple of things. So on the left side, it shows that 74% of workers, they expect to continue working after they retire. But what's interesting is 27% of the retirees are saying they're actually working to pay in retirement. So again, retirement is one of those that you have to personally define. And there's some great things, even in retirement, you may want to be thinking about, such as, focusing on that small business that you wanted to start, or maybe it's even a hobby that does generate some sort of ongoing income. But again, what's interesting is we are seeing individuals continue some sort of income during retirement, which even could be a hobby or, as I said, a small business. Now, looking at that, again, we talked about all 3 legs of that stool there: personal savings and retirement. So outside of a 401k or even a pension, there's other accounts such as taxable accounts. You may have a brokerage account or a mutual fund that you've started, or something that you've just done through your lifetime and continue to add to it. And there's a lot of great tax deferred vehicles outside of a 403b or 401k, and one of those could be a just any type of tax deferred account. And we'll talk in just a couple of minutes on a couple of those. But this is one of the benefits of tax deferral, and I just thought we'd put this up on the screen for just a minute here. So again, the whole purpose of tax deferral is, the money that would have gone to pay for taxes, that stays in your account. And we all know the power of compounding. It's just going to compound quicker. So you can see by this chart here, take a look. You can see that a $10,000 investment that went in, and over 30 years, after taxes, you're going to see about $38,000. But again, if you're able to put that away, not pay taxes on it, it's going to grow to $57,000. Even when you have to pay taxes on that, you're still ahead of the game, as you can see here, by $5,000. So the whole purpose is just growing things. Tax deferred is a great way to go. And then, keep in mind that, there's definitely some new, programs that have been put into place to stimulate the economy, as well as infrastructure spending. And so at some point, we know that could trickle down into potentially higher taxes. So tax deferral is a great tool when you can use it. Something just to talk about here for just a minute, depending on if you're still participating in your company or UCLA plan, just keep in mind a couple of things. So the contribution amount is $19,500 that you can put in. And then also, I think it's important to understand that, once you reach age 50 or older, the government has said, hey, we understand that you're getting close to retirement. We want to provide you with the ability to put more away. So if you have not seen this, you probably have, but just know that there's now a catch-up provision, and that allows you to put more money in. And you can see the total here between 6,500 plus 19.5. So you combine those amounts, and that's how much you can actually now put into your company-based plan. Now, in addition to a company-based plan, there's a couple other options, right? And you may have a Roth, you may have a traditional IRA. I just wanted to just quickly highlight both of these accounts, and then I'll turn it back over to Karl. But these have become very, very popular. And so a Roth is an account that was started in 1997, and it was just a way to basically put money away. Now, there's benefits, there's pros and cons to this, but just know this. You're paying tax on the money today, so anything that goes in is after-tax money. But the whole purpose is to put the money away for at least 5 years, and that you've reached 59 and a half, and then all your distributions come out tax-free. So I think that's pretty powerful. If you feel that you're going to be in a higher tax bracket in retirement, a Roth is a pretty cool way to go. Again, it doesn't lower your current taxable liability, but it can help you in the future. And also many different retirement programs now, 403Bs, do have Roth buckets. So that way you can determine which bucket you want to put that money in, if it's a Roth or in a traditional 403B. And I think everyone has heard of traditional IRAs. These have been around for many, many years. So outside of your company or your or UCLA plan, there's traditional IRA. Again, all your money is going to go in before taxes. Everything's going to be tax deferred. And then, of course, when it comes time to actually pull the money out, you can go ahead and do that at retirement. Something to keep in mind too, and this just recently as a result of the pandemic, there was some new legislation that recently passed. But one of the things that did change is your retirement distribution age. So in the past, 70 and a half was the age that no matter what, you had to take money out of your IRA. So the RMD starting age remains at 70 and a half if you reach that prior to 2020. So if you are reaching 70 and a half after 2020, then they've raised the RMD age to age 72. So basically what that's saying is they're allowing you to keep your money in your IRA a bit longer. So again, you don't have to do the RMD yet. And then again, I know we quickly touched on the Roth IRA, but again, it's after-tax contributions. Money goes in, it's going to grow tax-free, and then it's going to come out based on when you're taking the money out. So, and the nice thing is you never have to take an RMD on a Roth IRA because again, it's going to come out tax-free. So again, you don't have to worry about that. And there is some eligibility as it relates to opening a Roth. And again, that's something that we are more than glad to sit down with you and discuss further. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Karl.
Thanks, DJ. Okay, so we'll hop into this next slide. Barry, we did see your comment on the increase of the cost of Medicare. Yeah, it's significant. About I think premiums into 2022 are going up about 14-15%, whereas that cost of living adjustment about 6-ish%. So it's definitely interesting that that the cost. Another topic that we're covering early in the presentation is just the cost of healthcare, and something to keep an eye on. Since for the last decade, it's the rate of inflation on healthcare has been more than just regular inflation, in the general market. So, which I think would kind of show or maybe encourage, I would say, should encourage some folks maybe to put some more away for retirement, or maybe kind of have a conversation with folks helping you with your retirement accounts in terms of what you should be invested in and how it would work and how it can help your income throughout your retirement to increase it potentially. So DJ was just covering different retirement accounts, IRAs, Roth IRAs, things that I'm sure most folks are familiar with. We're going to touch on maybe an investment type that maybe you've heard of that you can utilize in retirement or prior to supplement income, or maybe even as an investment strategy for down the road. They're called annuities. From a very basic definition, an annuity is simply an investment type that's a contract between you and a life insurance company or an annuity company, right? Where they provide some sort of guarantees. Annuities could be invested in or purchased with after-tax money, right? Some money that maybe you have sitting in a savings account or a checking account, or it could be utilized inside of a retirement account, like an IRA, for example, right? And so what happens in an annuity, and again, we're going to touch on this, there's various different type of annuities out there, but essentially you're getting some sort of return on your money over time. If the money that you put into the annuity was after tax money, so money that you had, for example, in a savings account, it can grow over the years tax deferred, right? Similar to like a 401k, if you guys have that at work, or a 403b, where the money grows tax deferred, simply meaning that any sort of interest or any sort of growth that you're earning on that money, you don't have to worry about paying any sort of taxes while it remains in the annuity. But maybe down the road, if you take out withdrawals, and that's when your earnings get taxed, right? Less rules on annuities in the sense, from a federal level, there's no contribution limits, there's no mandatory distributions, required minimum distributions like you would have in an IRA or a 403b, and annuities can provide an additional lifetime income stream if folks wanted to turn it into that, right? Similar to a pension. So we'll go on here into the next slide here, DJ. So like I mentioned, different types of annuities that are out there. The three general ones that most folks that we talk to our members about: a fixed annuity, a variable annuity, and an indexed annuity. I won't spend too much time here, but just kind of overall general information. A fixed annuity is very similar to like a CD that you would get at a bank, right? You earn a fixed interest rate for a certain amount of years typically. And it's not tied to the stock market at all. Very straightforward in terms of exactly what interest you'll be earning inside of that account for the next, for example, 5 years, right? A variable annuity is different, very similar maybe to a 403b or a 401k, where you have mutual funds in there that can fluctuate depending on the stock market and on the bond market. With a variable annuity, you get more growth potential than a fixed annuity, but again, it's important to know that it can fluctuate in value from time to time. An indexed annuity is kind of a mix of both of those ideas. An indexed annuity is considered a safety of principal investment, meaning that there's no downside risk if the stock market were to go down, but the way that you earn interest is by following the stock market. Typically, these annuity companies will set a maximum that you can earn, right? For example, if the stock market were to go up 10% in a given year, most of these index annuities will say, hey, you won't make 10%. The max that you can make is 4%, for example. And in exchange, they're going to protect you if the stock market were to go the other way. If it goes down the following year, your principal's protected and you don't lose any money. Right. So again, very high level information on here. If anybody has any specific questions about these investment types and how they would apply to maybe your situation, feel free to reach out. Other investment types that we can utilize in retirement, whether inside of a retirement account like an IRA or outside in just a regular investment account, are stocks, bonds, and things like money markets or cash alternatives. I'm sure folks on this call are familiar with those terms. Oftentimes, the investment vehicle, the investment types that are often used in your employer-sponsored retirement plans are things like mutual funds or index funds, exchange-traded funds. Simply, the way I kind of explain these investment types is, whenever you hear the word fund, right, a mutual fund or an ETF, exchange-traded fund, they're investment types that essentially are they're like baskets, right? They're investments that are similar to baskets in the sense that they'll have many, many stocks and many, many bonds inside of them, right? And typically the way it works is the more stock exposure that you have in a mutual fund or an exchange-traded fund, the more aggressive your investment is considered, and the more growth potential you have over time. But it also means that you're taking on maybe more risk, and it can be more volatile whenever the stock market's not doing well. On the other end of the spectrum are mutual funds and exchange traded funds that have a lot of bonds in them, and those are considered lower risk, a little bit more stable, but at the same time, they're not going to grow over time as much as maybe a stock fund. So again, these are very, very often used in retirement accounts through your job, through your employer. Won't spend too much time here, guys, but essentially the idea here is for a lot of folks, you know, it's important to, before retiring or even in retirement, to maybe take a step back and not maybe overthink your investment strategy before kind of calculating maybe what your expenses and your budget might look like, right, in retirement. Oftentimes, you know, folks do a good job of maybe putting money away and saving and investing. They're not too sure maybe how much they need to put away and maybe what expenses might look like throughout the retirement. So very important to jot that down. And then after that, start planning which investments, which strategies might get you to that point. So we're going to transition a little bit here and get a little bit more specific in terms of developing an investment strategy and give you guys some ideas of what to think about when doing so. Again, transitioning to retirement as well as in retirement. So we'll jump in here. So the idea of investing wisely, there's three, let's say, bullet points that we want to keep in mind when we're deciding to put money away in investing, right? Three strategies, let's say: diversification, asset allocation, and dollar cost averaging. And so we'll jump into diversification in terms of what that means. I'm sure most folks on this call have heard that term before. It's the idea that we want to have exposure or invest in different type of investment vehicles to try to spread risk, let's say, and not put all of your eggs in one basket. The idea there is that the stock market and just investment vehicles in general, they all perform differently, right? There could be times where the stock market is doing very, very well, but maybe bonds are not doing so well, right? There's other investment vehicles out there like gold that might be a good investment at a certain period of time, but then it becomes a less effective one maybe when the stock market's doing really well, right? So having a diverse portfolio is very important, especially when transitioning into retirement, because we're going to be utilizing this money for income in a lot of cases. So a good quick chart here to kind of illustrate the power of diversification. You can take a look at this, but really the message here is that when we put all of our eggs in one basket, for example, in a particular stock, I've had members that have mentioned to me that a lot of their retirement money, their 401k, for example, is invested in maybe their company stock. You know, that you take on a higher level of risk by doing that, because yes, while the stock or that company can perform very well over the years, in individual stock investments, you take on a higher level of risk because you're subject to whatever that, you know, whatever news comes out about that particular company. If it's negative news, typically stocks take a pretty big hit. If it's good news, and obviously it goes the other way, but again, can be potentially more volatile. Whereas with diversifying your portfolio or money that you may need down the road or you know, during your retirement, we want to diversify it among different type of investment types to kind of spread risk, but also try to attain some growth over time. And so along similar lines, the idea of asset allocation is similar to diversification, but when we talk about asset allocation, we're talking about you know, the amount of risk that we want to be taking on within a particular account or within a particular portfolio, right? It's the idea that we want to have an efficient mix of different assets within one account, simply because when we are, let's say, younger, right? This is where time horizon comes into mind. When our investment time horizon, and what I mean by time horizon is when we're going to use this pile of money that we're putting away. When our investment time horizon is multiple decades in the future, then we can afford to take on higher risk to try to grow our nest egg more, simply because we have time, right? If the stock market or the investment that you have takes a drop, well, you don't need that money in the short term. You can let it recover and grow over time. Whereas, for example, if we're approaching retirement, or let's say we're in retirement, you know, the idea is not so much to try to take on a high level of risk to try to get significant gains, because remember, higher growth potential also means more risk and more potential for volatility. last thing we want is that we've been saving very well for many decades, and then we're approaching retirement, and because we're exposed maybe too much to a certain investment type, it takes a big dip right before retirement. Well, that changes plans, right? That typically changes kind of your personal objective, because maybe we need to stay invested to make that up, right? It's very important to make sure that your investments are allocated appropriate for your personal age and your time horizon. DJ, we can skip this. We just kind of pretty much, I just mentioned what we were just talking about, but these next two slides here are going to be pretty much us looking at portfolios that are considered conservative, and maybe another portfolio that's considered aggressive. Whenever you hear that term, most often it means that how much exposure do we have to riskier assets, typically to stocks, right? So an investment portfolio, let's say your IRA, your 403B, or a 401k, right? Retirement accounts, when you have, let's say about 50% of the money in that particular account exposed to bonds, about 20% to cash, right? When you see cash alternatives, it just means it's similar to what you would have like at the bank, right? Like a savings account. And about 30% exposed to the stock market. Well, that type of percentage allocation is considered conservative, right? Where it doesn't eliminate all risk, but it does lessen it, right? It reduces the amount of risk we have. But whenever we reduce the amount of risk that we're taking, we also reduce the growth potential in those cases, right? So on the left-hand side, you can see a portfolio like this from the last 20 years, right? Before 2021, the best year that this particular portfolio had was 18.79%, which sounds great. The worst year it had was likely 2008, right? When pretty much all asset types went down in value. It went down, this particular portfolio, a little bit less than 12%, right? Now, if we go to the next slide and we compare it, right? An asset allocation that is much more aggressive, right? Where we have a much more exposure to stocks. Well, again, like I mentioned, when we have more exposure to stocks, it means that we're being more aggressive when we're trying to grow this thing more, understanding that we're taking on higher risk. When we have about 75% exposed to the stock market, well, the best year in this particular portfolio over the last 20 years is maybe 27% in 1 year. But then you can see here in 2008, it took a 27% hit that year, right? So again, the idea here, tying all this together, how aggressive do I want to be as I'm approaching retirement, or if I'm in retirement, taking money out of my retirement accounts, can I afford to be this aggressive to try to make a great return, knowing that potentially it can take a big hit as well, right? So some really to keep in mind when you're investing, again, approaching retirement or in retirement as well. And DJ, I will turn it back over to you, sir.
Okay, great. So we have about 10 more slides to go. We'll probably get through this in about 5 minutes and then just leave some time for questions. But a few slides to kind of finish our presentation with. You can see this slide here talks a little bit about risk. And I know Karl mentioned this many times. So how do you determine how much risk you're willing to take on? Now, there's a couple ways to do this. Many organizations, just like Westcom, we actually have a risk tolerance questionnaire. We actually do it 2 ways. We have a questionnaire, and the workbook we actually provided before this event does have this questionnaire in there. It's very straightforward. 5 or 6 questions in there, kind of determining what your risk level should be. There's another way to do it. We actually can also do it based on your portfolio. There's a way that we take a look at your current holdings and see, based on your holdings, what that looks like. And what we do is we actually assign a speed limit to it. So just like when you're driving on the freeway or off the freeway, there's speed limits. We want to make sure that our members and clients understand kind of a speed limit for how fast or how slow your portfolio currently is. But there is the questionnaire that we provided in the workbook. So take a look at that, because that could be a good way to understand how your risk tolerance is. Now, this is just a kind of an example here of why the time horizon and risk matter. Karl kind of touched on this. So you can see a couple of things here. It's really 3 different types of investments. Now, Karl mentioned how some of these investments perform over time. And you can see, just looking at kind of that blue box there for stocks. Now, stocks have, on average, since 1996, they've almost double-digit returns. But look at the up and down of the blue line there. You can see, as Karl mentioned, 2008 was one of those years that no matter what you owned, it absolutely did come down in value. So a lot of our investors or clients or members we work with, the reason we want to figure out your risk tolerance is you may like 9 or 10%, but not able to stomach those ups and downs. So if you go to the next item on the left there, it's corporate bonds. Those are a little bit more conservative, so you don't see as much of the ups and downs. And then a treasury bill, of course, is something that's issued and backed and guaranteed by the US government. So it lets you know there exactly what the return is there. And clearly that's safe money, sleep well at night. So what this risk tolerance will do, it just kind of lets us know and lets Karl and I know, how should we allocate your money? Should it be 60% in corporate bonds and 40% in stocks? Now, if you look at the individual returns of stocks and bonds for this year, bonds are actually flat. In fact, a money market account would probably have outperformed it, but that still doesn't mean that they should not be in your portfolio, because what you need to look at is, if you look at stocks this year, they're up double digits. In fact, the Dow Jones up more than 20%. So when you think of that, if you had a mix of bonds and stocks, knowing that you're going to have half as much risk, well, then your return may be around 10%, but I'll take 10%, knowing that my risk is going to be much, much lower than having 100% in stocks. So something that everyone on this call probably has been taking advantage of, and that's dollar cost averaging. So whether that's putting money in an outside account or just adding money through your payroll deductions in the past, that went in to invest. So if you are at retirement now and you're not adding money into your 403b or 401k, just know that dollar cost averaging still is a great way to approach things. And let me go to this next slide and I'll kind of just visually show you what this looks like. All you're doing in dollar cost averaging is you're putting the same amount in on a monthly basis or on a biweekly basis, and that's what you're doing. So in this example, it's just showing $100 is being put in on a monthly basis. Now, the price of your investment, it's going to be higher, it's going to be lower, but the whole purpose is we're trying to invest on a regular basis. So doing a dollar cost averaging strategy, it actually can lower your average share price that you pay over time. Instead of just purchasing everything in 1 month, what we're going to do is just say, let's do this over the next several months, the next 3 months, the next 6 months, or let's just continually do it. Again, it's a way to make sure that when the market is high or low, you're putting the same amount of investment money to work. So I know we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about determining your needs, developing a strategy, and then protecting your nest egg. I just want to cover a couple of key topics on this last item, which is protecting your nest egg. So, the biggest way that we tell our members is, again, start saving and doing it early. Even if you find that, we have individuals that retire at age 60 or 65, which we feel is still very young, because when you look at the average life expectancy of both male and female now, it's somewhere in the 80s. So what we always want to plan for is called longevity risk. It's the notion or the question, what if I live? What if I live to age 90? How do I protect myself from inflation and making sure my money doesn't run out? So even though you may be retired, there could be opportunities to continue to keep saving and doing those in other vehicles that work similar to your 401k or 403b. The second point here is just continuing to do it on a regular basis, and then also preparing for the unexpected, right? I recently had a situation that I had to replace a water heater in the home, and those are not cheap. Those are about $3,000, and it's just a matter of, okay, am I prepared for these unexpected events that may come up in retirement or as I'm planning to retirement? So I know I just mentioned this about saving and doing it on a regular basis. This is a pretty interesting chart that we show a lot of individuals, no matter where you're at in the cycle of investing. Clearly, those individuals that are in their 20s, the advantage they have is time. So it shows the exact same amount that's invested whether you're 20, whether you're 35 or 45, and the difference of what happens to that at the very end. So as we tell our members and clients, continue to start saving early, doing it now, and even during retirement. As I mentioned, longevity risk is something that we want to make sure to plan for. And then this is really important. I know Karl touched on this, is making sure to rebalance. I bet everyone, if we looked at our portfolios over the past year or two, we've probably seen a dramatic increase in the equity or the stock side of our portfolio, and maybe not so much a increase in the fixed income portion. So a couple of years ago, we may be at a 40 to 60% ratio. Now stocks could be 60% of our portfolio. So maybe it's an interesting time to take some money and reallocate it. And I think we've seen a little bit of that actually in the market over the past week. They're talking about the great rotation that's happening from different types of investments into other types, given the fact that predictions of the economy reopening for 2022. And then the final thing we always want to make sure is prepare for the unexpected. And you can do that a lot of different ways. There's life insurance. There's other ways to protect for the unexpected. In fact, we always recommend, especially for someone that is either going to retire or just retired, it's a great time to do a beneficiary update on your account. Do all the beneficiaries, both primary and beneficiaries, play a meaningful part in your life now? Are they the ones that you want to make sure are listed as your beneficiaries? And also, a lot of our retirees set up businesses. So it's also important to make sure that you have some sort of protection from any type of liability. And that could just be how you set up and structure the business or hobby that you are doing. And then Karl also briefly touched on this, and that's long-term care. It's something that all of us should be aware of. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but just know that, today's 65-year-olds, that there's actually a 70% chance that someone in age 65 may need some sort of long-term care service. What's interesting is there's a lot of interesting and new and exciting ways to actually structure this that doesn't take a big commitment, but it's a way to just have that protection should you need it. So I know we covered a lot in this 1 hour that we were together. Just know that we are here for you at Westcom, and we appreciate the time that you've given us. And Aisha, I will turn it back over to you and see if we have any questions.
Thank you so much. Let me see if we, so everyone that's here, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions. It's really important that you have the tools that you need in order to have a successful retirement. I think Sal is still sharing a screen, but go ahead and feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. Thank you for coming this morning. Do we have any questions? I didn't see anything else in the chat besides the COLA. Okay, so I'm going to email the booklet in a follow-up email. I will also email this recording once it's fully uploaded to YouTube. And I have the representative's contact information, but if there's a general email address you want me to share with our retirees, I can do that so that if you have follow-up questions, people can ask you directly or contact Westcom with any other questions. So again, thank you for this really informative program. I'll let you all have your morning back, and we will stay in touch. Have a safe and happy week, and take care.
Thank you, Westcom folks.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.